Pro-Palestinian propagandists, when they argue their point, they often face challenges. I think not, obviously not as many as they should. But anybody who's semi-intellectually curious, if you tell them there's Israel is committing a genocide, it's an apartheid state, they will go and look it up if they are not already familiar with the situation. Um, so a good way to try to argue for bad ideas is not to try to argue for them at all. Instead, to ridicule anything that contradicts them. And we've seen a surprising number of comedians. Actually, maybe they shouldn't be so surprising. Number of comedians who have become prominent pro-Hamas commentators in recent months because they don't need to give you an argument for their side. They just need to ridicule the other side. So we've talked about Dave Smith, and I think we're talking about him again tomorrow because could never have enough of that guy. I don't think we've ever talked about. Is it Andrew Schultz? Is that the name of the comedian? I'm getting that right, right? Yeah, who sort of came to prominence recently and is now also again arguing for Hamas, but he's allegedly funny. So, but even those people are almost can't match Bassem Youssef in his uh, shittiness, being a piece of, I'm trying to use the nicer swear words. Yeah, look, I'm joined by Daniel and Jonathan. If you guys have anything to say before we go to this video, go ahead. Otherwise, we will play Bassem Youssef's appearance on Piers Morgan on October 17th, 10 days after Hamas's attack and the day of what was first reported as the El Ali hospital bombing. And we later discovered what it actually was.
Let's roll the tape and start with the facts as they are.
Well, joining me now to discuss the conflict in Israel and Gaza is a TV host and satirist, Bassem Youssef. Bassem, it's great to have you back on the program. I wish it was under different circumstances. First of all, what is your reaction to what happened?
Oh, it was terrible, of course. I mean, we kind of get our news kind of also secondhand because, my wife's family, they live in Gaza. They have cousins and uncles there, and their house also was bombed. We haven't been able to communicate with them for the past 3 days. Communication are lost. So we don't know actually what is the, how are they doing, but, we're used to that. I mean, it's just like, it's very repetitive. We're used to that. We're used to them being bombed every time and moving from one place to the other. It's just like those Palestinians, they're very dramatic. Israel killing us. But they never die. I mean, they always come back. They're very difficult to kill, very difficult people to kill. I know because I'm married to one. I tried many times, couldn't kill her.
All right. Let's pause here. First of all, I don't know if it was cut off just for me, but when Piers Morgan asks, "What is your reaction?" It was cut off, at least for
No,
me.
that was just me. I misclicked.
Okay, so what he says is, "What is your reaction to October 7th?" Which is important to know.
Oh,
He did
sorry.
not react to October 7th. He reacted to Israel responding to October 7th. Yeah, I need to calm down, so I'm going to go to you guys first. Jonathan, what do you make of just that those few seconds?
Yeah, I mean, his initial response to October 7th was seemed to be, at least, we're used to Israel's bombing. And it's like a complete absence of any context. I mean, he said, oh, we're used to them. Palestinians always having to get up and move from town to town. Again, look, I'm fortunate not to have known who Bassem Youssef was prior to today's discussion, but it's important to know because he is an influencer. These are influencers. And he seems to present Israel as, well, they're always bombing. The poor Palestinians, they're always bombing. His joke about his wife, that he's tried to kill his wife, it sounds like kind of a takeoff. There's an old Catskills joke about, take my wife. Oh, no, please, take my wife, meaning, oh, I'm referencing my wife, but the joke is, oh, no, please actually take her. But it's not actually murdering her. So, off the top, there's something that's very I know he's a comic, but the fact that his response is to joke about something, a complete horrific massacre in which the Palestinians are intimately responsible, to me seems pretty uncouth.
Yeah. And we're going to hear him doubling down on that joke in a minute. By the way, Jonathan, I'm glad, we're here to educate. So I'm glad we're educating you and you get to hear about people you didn't know about. Who else was it that we talked about that we didn't know about? Was it
And,
the
comic
Instagram guy?
Dave Smith, all these. Well, let's keep
You get to know the dark side of the internet from this show. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, just first of all about the joke. So, the joke is kind of funny, but again, it's this sort of like I hate my wife jokes. They're from like the 90s. Like, can we
no,
like keep?
earlier than that. Our super chatters, El Rito, Jesse Wrightback, and with all these people who support us, just £5 a month, and you keeping us on the air, Daniel, they pointed out it's actually Henny Youngman. The comedian Henny Youngman's joke was, take my wife. And that meant, no, please take her, like take her away. That's the joke. I think it's actually from the 50s, maybe the 60s.
Yeah, like those sort of jokes. I say from the 90s because, like, in Slovakia before the 90s, comedy was censored, so we didn't have it. So we had these sort of jokes are coming like from the 90s. But again, it's just so ridiculous. First, the fact that the interview starts with already he is clearly like sarcastic, like, oh yeah, we keep getting bombed. He's already like trying to ridicule the situation. He's already just if we played a little bit more, he's gonna say, yeah, I'm trying to kill my wife, but she keeps hiding. Oh, you're saying something.
Yeah, don't spoil the rest of the. Yeah, I
Oh,
want people to hear it
all
from
right,
him
all right.
because it also it does show again that point shows something. It actually goes into the details of what's going on. So
Well,
Yeah, but
we've only given people a taste. Let's let them evaluate it a little bit before we, right?
yeah, sure. I have a couple things, but we can play a bit more.
all right.
Dark humor there, and I understand why, because
Oh, it's
sometimes
not dark human. I try to get to her every time, but she uses our kids as human shields. I can never take her out.
All right. Yeah,
Again,
that's Daniel. Do you want to pick it up from there? Because yeah, that was the point I was hoping we'd get to.
Yeah, again, you have to realize, what is the purpose of comedy? And when he's trying to joke, and it's kind of funny, she's hiding behind, he's making fun of the human child. But again, what is the implication? He is implying that this doesn't happen. Is he trying to say that basically, yeah, oh yeah, Palestinians using human shield? That's ridiculous. Come on, like he's using is as sort of he's trying to make it as a stereotype and sort of like making fun of it, like this sort of thing doesn't happen, and he does that from the start. He's trying to yeah, trying to make fun of all of Israel or all of Israel's action. Even he says quickly after October 7, he says something like, oh, we are getting this sort of like secondhand information, but I have a family in Gaza. So yeah, international reporting, Israeli reporting, sort of different agencies trying to understand what is the situation on the ground. That's secondhand reporting. But my cousin in Gaza, yeah, he knows everything. He has the perfect like understanding of the whole situation, and I can therefore give you. But what you read in the media, that's all crazy. Again, this sort of like implication that yeah, trying to again make fun of sort of make a joke of the whole situation, that we only he in a sense has information about it because his wife's family lives in Gaza.
Yeah, and Sammy says here in the chat, horrible joke in the actual context, but it's not just that. This is not a joke. This is propaganda disguised as humor, and it's propaganda that we're supposed to read into. Well, of course, Israel's claims that the Palestinians use their own people as human shield are false because I'm making fun of it, so it can't be true. But the thing is, it's not just Israel's claims. Hamas says this very clearly. They say, Palestinians die, good. This is a part of our war, and they go to heaven. So, it is by the admission of the people who started this war with an act that he doesn't answer the question about at all. He pretends it didn't happen. It's their preferred method of fighting, that he is there, that ridiculing the idea that it is actually true. Jonathan.
I mean, Ayn Rand actually uses humor quite a bit. I remember in the 1976 course, she was asked about her use of humor in her novels, and she answered it, quite eloquently. And there's a lot of humor in Ayn Rand's work and Ayn Rand's novels. And what's interesting is what I take away is I remember her comment that humor is always destructive, and this is found in the lexicon. Her line is that the classic example is that you see a snooty, very well-dressed dowager, I think that means like a fancy lady, walking down the street, and then she slips on a banana peel. What's funny about it? It's the contrast of a woman's pretensions to reality. She acted very grand, but reality undercut it with a plain banana peel. And Daniel, I wonder if that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, in this context, he thinks Israel is that woman who thinks she's above it all and slips on a banana peel. So he's making fun of Israel. And, to laugh at, Ms. Rand continues, to laugh at heroes, to laugh at yourself is monstrous. It means spitting in your own face. And, he is presenting Israel as the one to be laughed at because, as you said, who could imagine such a thing as using our family as human shields? That's exactly what they do. And that's what makes this so devastatingly effective for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and since we also have someone in the chat, there's also been an idea I've been playing around with, because some people are saying also Israel uses human shield, and the evidence they use for it is like crazy. But you have to realize Israel literally cannot use human shields. Why? Because if Hamas, let's say Hamas is targeting, has like a military target, and they hear, oh, sorry, there are civilians there. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's good. The human shields can only work as a concept if basically the fact that there are civilians there will affect the decision you make. This is not Hamas's policy. Hamas likes if they can kill more civilians because that's their goal. The goal is to kill as many people as possible.
Yeah, I don't know. And I guess just, if I had family in a war-torn area, I guess maybe even if I was a comic, and it's a little bit of projection, but even Piers Morgan seems a little stunned. He's kind of like dark humor, and it is. It's like he's laughing at the murder of complete civilians, people like the 6 that were abducted that we found out this last week. The people he's laughing at that. He's making light of that. I mean, there's just such an ugliness about that.
Yeah, and one of the pro-Hamas trolls in the chat says Piers Morgan is a rabid Nakba denier. I mean, Piers Morgan condemned October 7th and then asked people to condemn it, but also condemned any attempt by Israel to bring those who did October 7th to justice and prevent the future attacks that the October 7th perpetrators promised to repeat again and again. So, and he has on his platform, under the bullshit claim of free speech, he has all these vile pro-Hamas propagandists and very few proper defenders of Israel. I know he has Douglas Murray on from time to time.
Just yesterday he had Candace and Rabbi Shmuley again.
Yeah, which is ridiculous to bring Rabbi Shmuley as the pro-Israel side. You only bring Rabbi Shmuley as the pro-Israel side if you want the pro-Israel side to lose. Now, if you bring Candace, that might also say something about what you think of the other side, but he also brings people who can actually, who don't seem like they are off their meds.
Let's play a little more. Let's roll the tape. My fear is this goes on forever, so roll the tape.
Understand the humor, but to be serious, Bassem, about this. Tonight,
I will be serious. Now, I will be serious. I was watching your interview with Ben Shapiro, and I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I think that Ben Shapiro is one of the smartest people who ever walked this earth. He's very, very smart. I follow him, and I believe everything he said. And when he came on your show, his solution was, and I quote, his solution was that the solution for this is for Israel to annex Gaza and to kill as many son of bitches as possible to make sure that this will never happen again. And anyone who called for a ceasefire will be a terrorist sympathizer. So God forbid, I don't want to be labeled as a terrorist sympathizer. So I agree with Ben Shapiro. I think we should kill as many son of bitches as possible.
Well, let me,
so
okay,
far,
but Bassem, let me...
so far 3,500 people were killed, including 5,000 son of bitches in the bombing of the Baptist hospital as we speak right now. 1/3 of those 3,500 were children. So my question to Ben Shapiro is, how many more son of bitches do we need to kill so Ben Shapiro is happy?
All right.
So-
Okay, so I have a lot to say about that. And by the way, yeah, I know we might not get through the whole thing, but at least you get to hear more of us than of this piece of shit. I'm not speaking for Ben Shapiro. I might agree with what he was quoted as supposedly saying there, although he didn't actually say it. But how many more sons of bitches? Many, many more sons of bitches need to be killed. That's what's clear today. What nearly 11 months after that interview with Piers Morgan, because clearly they're still holding the hostages, they're starving them, and then they're executing them. They're still carrying out terrorist attacks wherever they can. They still won't surrender. So many, many more sons of bitches need to be killed. And yes, annexing Gaza is absolutely necessary if Israel wants long-term peace, because when Israel left Gaza to its own devices, it got a shower of rockets from all over the country, and it got October 7th. So yes, many more.
He also plays this kind of thou doth protest too much. I guess the comedy here is that he's saying Ben Shapiro was so aggressive, those sons of bitches kill sons of bitches. So I guess that's, that's what he's kind of laughing at here. Again, Rand's comment is that humor is always destructive. So he's saying, in this context, Ben Shapiro is that high and mighty woman, but reality is undercutting him because, gee, Ben Shapiro is advocating for supposedly the murder of all these innocent people again, evading the context completely. But it's what's funny is he thinks Ben's use of the term "sons of bitches" is so over the top. What about all that video of the Israeli kids pulled from that conference or that music festival being dragged through the streets, having their bodies mutilated? Like, is he down with that? I mean, if he thinks that "sons of bitches" is so over the top and so extreme, I mean, he's down with what Hamas and the Palestinians did to prompt this retaliation. And Rand, again, I think, has a great comment on this. She says, humor is not an unconditional virtue. Its moral character depends on its object. To laugh at the contemptible is a virtue. To laugh at the good is a hideous vice. So I'm not laughing at Ben Shapiro here. I'm saying, Bassem, how many more is it going to take? How many more is it going to take before this ends for good?
In terms of, is he down with what happened on October 7th? Again, when he asked, he replied with Palestinians are being bombed. It could be that he's referring to the fact that Israel did start bombing on October 7th at night. So it could be that. That's the thing that he takes away from October 7th. But yeah, also another point that he made there, everybody who calls for a ceasefire will be labeled a terrorist sympathizer. Yes, everybody who calls for a ceasefire after the terrorists did their part and a ceasefire would allow them to get away with it is a terrorism sympathizer. Daniel.
Yeah, and this is, so again, just to remind that this is 10 days after October 7th. So this is October 17th. And yeah, there were calls, you had sporadic calls even on October 7th, October 8th of some people. But after a week or so, you had actual, you had the squad, a few members of the squad starting to call for ceasefire. Apparently, I mean, at least by implication, Bassem Youssef also would basically be in favor of ceasefire. And again, this should be like sort of interview, but he is making like the whole, the sort of the whole like sarcastic, Ben Shapiro, he's the smartest person ever, and so he doesn't want to offend him. Like this sort of like, can we like actually like take this issue seriously instead of just like mocking the whole of it? Because again, like let's actually have a conversation. And I want to definitely talk about the fact. So he mentioned he mentioned the Baptist hospital, which I wanted to look up. I wanted to confirm that is the Al Ali hospital. He didn't call it that. He just called it Baptist hospital because I think that that is also what is sometimes to refer to in Arabic. But that's Al Ali hospital. He blamed Israel for it. Before any confirmation, he was quick. This interview was done, I think, only like few hours after it happened. He was quick to jump that Israel was behind this because it happened on October 17th. Again, it wasn't Israel. And again, he was also quick to jump on the numbers. Again, the numbers were completely out of what it actually was. But again, you can see, and on the thumbnail, he says he's an anti-Semite. And I think absolutely he is. And in the past, we had someone ask us, can you show one clip when Candace Owens is being anti-Semitic? And you sort of have to realize that when it comes to these things, it's usually hard to like pin, because no one will say, I hate, well, I don't want someone to quote me now, but no one will say like, I hate Jewish people. No one will directly say that. You will never catch someone saying that. You have to sort of listen to them and listen to what they're actually saying. So this sort of like quick to blame Israel for everything, this sort of quick to accept all the other ones that are fighting against Israel. You have to sort of contextually accept the knowledge. I have a few things, but
I'm just gonna say it, and that's his audience, not somebody like you, Daniel, who's gonna do research and understand, but the casual passerby who maybe has heard a little bit about the situation, and it just reinforces the altruist narrative that mean old Israel is up to it again. There they go, just bombing Bassem's family. There they go, just not giving any cares. I mean, there's no acknowledgement of the unbelievable care, I guess you could use, that Israel goes into selecting car, etc. There's none of that. It's just mean old Israel, the poor Palestinians. Of course, they did nothing to provoke this. It's just mean Israel at it again. And it's that casual, everyday viewer and listener who sees this and it fits right into their narrative. The West is bad, Israel's bad, and the poor Palestinians are the ones who deserve everything.
Yeah, and sorry, the whole thing is just ridiculous when he talks about the constant bombing. At some point he'll show like a graph, and at some point in years there's less than 50 Palestinians even dying during that year. And this sort of like, Gaza keeps getting bombed just randomly for no reason. Yet no one is dying. And when there are a lot of people dying, and he's sort of but we'll get to that also later.
The
but
irony that the rocketing, the bombing has been coming from the Palestinians to Israel for years. But that's just like crickets.
Yeah, maybe Gaza also has their own Iron Dome, and somehow, despite all the bombing from Israel, they manage to destroy all of them.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of people like Candace, us being able to show clips of them being anti-Semitic, we do that all the time. Yeah, it's not going to be like I hate Jews. It's not going to be something that fits in the sticker that you can put on the back of your car, but it is going to fit into a tweet. I mean, the things she said about Jews being behind the Kennedy assassination, the whole Zionism is a pedophile ring or whatever she was trying to claim there. Yeah, that stuff is anti-Semitic. Now with Bassem Youssef, I mean, his whole spiel here is anti-Semitic. If his response to October 7th is, yeah, Palestinians were bombed on October 7th, which I assume is what he was trying to say there, then yeah, that is anti-Semitic. Another point that he made there, yeah, as you mentioned, he said 3,500 people died, 5,000 of them in this bombing. He obviously meant 500, but he misspoke, something that originally was already a lie. And he knows it's a lie, not even if the exact details hadn't come out yet, because if it was a bombing of the hospital, there's no way you can count 500 bodies that quickly. B, he knows enough about the situation to know that Israel, unfortunately, doesn't do that. Unfortunately, they don't bomb a hospital. Even if Sinwar is in the hospital, they're not going to bomb it. He knows that. So yeah, he is there lying and yeah, using Hamas numbers. That day was the day that made a slight shift in how some of the media reports, in that they still report Hamas numbers, but now they say, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, you will not hear that ever from Bassem Youssef unless he makes fun of the idea that Hamas can lie.
Yeah, and just quickly, no mention of terrorists either. All Palestinians that die are automatically innocent civilians. There's not a single one. That is the implication he gives. He will give like for him, Hamas is this sort of like floating abstraction. It's sort of like is there and is actually blamed for all the bad things, but no one on the ground is actually part of Hamas. That's all like separate from this things that does evil things.
Palestinian people are all completely innocent, right? I mean, they have nothing to do with Hamas. They have nothing to do with any of this. Instead, that they're aware of it, they endorse it, they voted for it, and they're where all the hostages being held, and over and over again. So, I mean, Razi, it reminds me a bit. I have to say, I am dating myself here, but getting back to this idea of Bassem laughing at Israel. Israel's always they're the butt of all of his jokes. And when I was growing up, there was it was in reruns by the time I was a kid, but some of you might remember Hogan's Heroes. And Hogan's Heroes was a TV show that featured Americans in German POW camps. And the Germans, the Nazis, were depicted as bumbling fools, and we were laughing at the idiocy of the Nazis, not of the good guys, not of the Americans. And Bassem has it, turned just the way around. He makes the West the evil guys, and as you said, Hamas, the freedom fighters who just want a better life for us all.
Yeah, I believe he is actually going to be starring in the remake, which is Tucker's Heroes, where Churchill is shown as the bumbling fool. All right. Anyway, we are not going to get through the whole thing, but let's get through a bit more of it.
Let me just stop you there to say.
I'm sorry that. Listen, I'm really at a disadvantage here. I'm looking at a camera. I don't see you. I can hear you on my ears.
The reason I'm interrupting is I think it might be.
I
think you're conflating different interviews with Ben Shapiro. He didn't use the phrase "sons of bitches" with me. Let me play to you what he actually said on my show.
He did. Go back to your interview.
No, he didn't. That was another interview. But let me play what he said to me here.
Well, frankly, I don't believe in proportionate response to terrorism. I believe that the way that you stop terrorism is with wildly disproportionate response. That doesn't mean in terms of targeting civilians. It means in terms of killing as many terrorists as humanly possible and allowing them to dictate the terms of engagement by hiding behind civilians in areas that they are supposedly responsible for means that the only option for Israel is to surrender to Hamas's hatred of its own citizens, its willingness to use its own children as human shields. No country worth its salt could ever do that.
Now, that is substantively different to what you said he said, right? He's talking there specifically about Hamas terrorists.
I agree with him. What is a proportionate response? Because it has been different from one tier to another. So if you look to this graph, for example, this is the death of Israeli and Palestinians, and it's changing from one year to year. It's like fluctuating like crypto. So my question is today, what is the going rate today for human lives? I mean, 2014 was a great year for Ben Shapiro. 88 Israelis were died, and there was 2,329 Palestinians killed on the other side. That is one Israeli for 27 Palestinians. That is a very good exchange rate. What I'm saying is, what is the exchange rate for today?
That is a great question. And by the way, I can only imagine Kay Burley watching that interview and remembering this great argument and then asking Elon Levy, when there was the deal in November where terrorists were released in exchange for hostages, and it was 3 terrorists per hostage. And she asked Elon Levy, do you think Israeli lives are worth 3 times as much as Palestinian lives? And of course, this is the Palestinian. Yeah, and that's a nice attempt, Daniel. But yeah, Elon Levy's facial response should be one of the greatest memes floating around, but I don't think the younger generation appreciate it enough. But yeah, that's the exchange rate is unfortunately determined by Hamas. Hamas does not value Palestinian lives at all. They value them to the point of when you have Palestinian deaths, you'll have useful idiots in Western media like Piers Morgan, like Kay Burley, talking about proportionality, and somebody more principled on the Hamas side, like Bassem Youssef, coming in and saying, look at this graph. More Palestinians died in the war that Palestinians started against Israel and refused to stop than Israelis. Therefore, they're obviously the victims of the war they started, rather than Israelis who are begging for peace since before their country was even founded.
Yeah, and I love how he picked the year. Oh, in 2014 it was an exceptional good year for Israel. I wonder what has happened in 2014 that so many Palestinians have died. Then comparing to the last years, I wonder if Bassem Youssef knows that that was again started by Hamas. Hamas has, I think, either kidnapped or killed Israeli citizens, and again, it was some response from Israel. But again, nothing that would warrant it. You have to remember, once a nation starts war, meaning starts war against a free nation, tries to take it over or tries to act aggressively against it, that nation has lost legitimacy to exist. That nation needs to be gone and needs to be destroyed, and whoever picks up the pieces can try to figure out something. But again, the fact that Hamas has been allowed to exist for such a long time is again ridiculous, and he doesn't mention that.
And not just start it, but perpetuate it, but continue it. I mean, look, if Hamas started this war and Israel had retaliated, and Hamas had said something like, after Hiroshima, Nagasaki, wave the white flag, we surrender, we are giving up this philosophy, we're giving up this ideology, we are returning all the hostages. Israel has not gone out there looking for aggression. And it reminds me of a comment that Dr. Peikoff once made on his podcast years ago. It was something to the effect of that, out of context, anyone can prove anything about anybody. And yeah, you're right, Daniel. He holds up a chart and it says, geez, look, Israel's done so much more killing without any context of exactly what's gone on there, which has been a state of war against the state of Israel by the Palestinians and almost every other country in the Middle East. That moral equivalency is really what irks me. It says killing is bad, and anyone who does killing is, now, if that sounds familiar, President Trump said that years ago, right? Do you think only Russia does that? We kill a lot of people too. Well, for valid reasons of self-defense, for retaliation, for protecting your citizens against aggression, killing is sometimes important. It's sometimes necessary. It's justified. It's right. And Bassem evades all of that just to get the altruism working in the minds of his, half listening viewers, all under the age of 40.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, that graph is so much uncontextual. Again, he's basically saying, oh yeah, people killed on October 7th, innocent people, or even some IDF, some people in the IDF that got killed on October 7th. And the retaliation, let's just say because this is in the numbers, the people, the Palestinians in the Israeli territory that were killed on October 7th, that's included in the number. So that those people and the Israeli people killed on October 7th and Israel killing terrorists that have committed on October 7th, that's the same thing. That's just pretty much apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, that's included, as are made up people who died. But even when they talk about
you shouldn't forget about the people under the rubble.
Yeah, and a third of the people being children, of course, that is most likely made up. But remember, children or anybody under the age of 18, and Palestinians, certainly from the age of 14 and above, are fighting, are shooting at soldiers. So you could say, look, they're still victims. They're children. They don't know what they're doing. But yeah, they're victims of the people who put the gun in their hands, not the people who are defending themselves from those guns. I don't know. Yeah, Daniel is enjoying, I think, something in the chat. I might have missed it. I don't know if you want to share it or if you want to go to the next clip because
let's see a little bit more.
All right.
It's not me. It's not me, guys. I'm not on either side.
No,
here.
not you. Like when I say you guys, I say like the people on the other side of that. I know that you don't think like that, Pierce. You're one of the good guys. But let me tell you something. I mean, the reason that I'm using this is that I can't remember what happened in 2014, and there was no music festival. But there must be something. I mean, they must do something. It is their fault. It has to be something. I mean, 2018, 300 Palestinians died. Who's counting? You know. So the thing is, what my question is, let's find what is the exchange rate for human life today, so we expect the future death of Palestinians, and we'll be happy to it.
My response to that would be this, Bassem. I've thought carefully about this because I think it's very tricky for people like me to immerse ourselves into a conflict where we're not directly involved. And I thought carefully about what I feel about this. I feel that the scale of what Hamas did on October the 7th supersedes anything else I've seen in this conflict, really ever. The savagery, the butchery, the slaughter of 1,300 people, the shooting of babies, the 100%. Kidnapping of grandmothers, and so on. So if we can agree on that, which I think is inarguable, then the question then becomes, again, about proportion. I don't disagree that there's been a lot of bad stuff on both sides going back historically for decades. But if we agree that this was on a different level altogether, quite deliberately by Hamas, designed to provoke. No, here's my question. Let me ask you a question. And the question, because you raised it earlier about proportion. I honestly don't know what the proportionate response is. I honestly don't. I don't. I've been watching the airstrikes this week thinking.
So what's your question?
Well, I would ask you, if you were Israel, what would you?
If I was Israel.
If you were Israel and that had happened to you, what would you think would be the appropriate way for the country to respond?
I would do exactly like Israel did, kill as many people as possible, since the world is letting me do it. I mean, I can do it because I can, you know. But the thing is, you know what? I agree with you. And you know what? I'm going to be even ahead of you, because I see the question coming. Do you condemn Hamas for the atrocity? Yes, I condemn Hamas. I condemn Hamas. Hamas is the source of all evil. They're a reason for everything. And you know what? Let's, for a minute, imagine a world without Hamas.
Right.
What will this word look like? Let's give this word a name, and let's name this word the West Bank. Hamas has absolutely no control in the West Bank, and since the beginning of this year, only through August, 37 Palestinian kids were killed. No music festival, no paragliding, no Hamas. Since the occupation of the West Bank, 7,000 Palestinians were killed.
Okay. So I don't know, I don't know if I should go into one by one what he said, but I'll try. So first of all, 2014, I believe 2014, off the top of my head, I don't always remember the dates, but I believe 2014 was when they kidnapped and then murdered 3 16-year-olds. 2018, was that the march to the march of Palestinians to the fence? Now, if it was a small number of the people who were there were shot dead, but again, we saw in 2023 what happens when Israel lets people come to the fence and does nothing about it. So the problem in the previous march was not enough Palestinians died, and the proof of that is October 7th, 2023, and again, something that he just does not mention. Everything about this guy, when Pierce said, let me ask you a question, and he has this facial expression, even the facial expression of a cynical asshole who is going to give some sort of answer like, yes, I condemn Hamas. And then you think, okay, yeah, he thinks October 7th is bad, but he doesn't like the response. And then he says, yeah, Hamas is the root of all evil, where you see he's actually not condemning Hamas, but being a comedian, he doesn't have to tell you anything about anything. And then he gets to the punchline, as any good comedian does, and says, let's imagine a world without Hamas, and let's call it the West Bank. Hamas is not in control of the West Bank. So first of all, in that lie, because, Hamas is not the ruling party, entity, organization in the West Bank. Fatah is, but Hamas has a presence there and carries out terrorist attacks and killed Israelis in terrorist attacks that are planned in the West Bank. But he says something very revealing about the Palestinian people there, something that, of course, Piers Morgan, being a supporter of the Palestinians, doesn't point out, that you don't have to be Hamas to be on the side of the Palestinian national goal, national mission of exterminating the Jews. You can be in Fatah, you can be in the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, you can be in Islamic Jihad. This is what the Palestinian people are united about, exterminating the Jews. So yeah, in the West Bank, Palestinians die because they start wars against Israel. And by the way, this is in 2018 and 2014, and whenever this happens, what you can know for sure is that the Palestinians started it because, unfortunately, Israel doesn't do anything preemptively almost ever. Otherwise, it would have gone in, on October 6th or on October 5th or in 2004 or in 2005. Instead of capitulating, it would have defeated the enemy. Jonathan.
The New Ideal, which is the Ayn Rand Institute's online journal, has a great article about how Miss Rand used humor in The Fountainhead. And one of the comments that Tom Bowden, I think quoting Robert Mayhew, writes is that laughter comes, at least in part, from an awareness of that which does not fit your view of reality. It is the response that accompanies the recognition of the insignificance of something and the consequent dismissal of it. And in this context, it's Israel's over what he would consider to be disproportional response that he's committing. Because Piers asks him, like, well, what would you do? And he said, I would do what Israel did, kill as many people as possible, something to that effect. And he is making fun of that. He's putting that down. He's saying that that is such an unbelievably insignificant, foolish, immoral, bad thing to do that he's not even going to, give it space, give it airtime. So he dismisses it from the get-go. And again, it's laughing at the good. And again, for casual observers of the entire Middle East, Israel is the big, bad, mean aggressor, always bombing, always targeting civilians. They're at it again. And the Palestinians are just the poor, defenseless, never did anything wrong, never launched any missiles, never kidnapped anyone. So it's just a complete appeal to ignorance.
All right, we have some disturbing comments in the chat, but one particularly disturbing one is by Emmett, who says, I can't seem to buy a super chat. Daniel, I don't know if you have any way of fixing that, and I'll quickly say, El Rito says, why even platform people this ignorant of facts, history, and so on? If you mean, why does Piers platform them? Because, he, I don't know, thinks it's good for ratings, thinks it's interesting, thinks that free speech means listening to what every piece of shit on the planet has to say, and only the pieces of shit, not the interesting people. I don't know. I can't speak for Piers. The reason we're talking about it is, again, like we talk about other influencers on the pro-Hamas side, because they seem to have, or they do have, a massive audience of people who think what they're saying is worth listening to and end up agreeing with them. So yeah, we are providing our cultural commentary here by trying to figure out how these people are so prominent in the culture, and how do we replace them.
Yeah, I want to defend little Piers Morgan. I think there is something unique about his shows. Basically, whenever we discuss someone, we oftentimes listen to their appearance on Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has also never copyrighted any of their videos, which cannot be said about everyone, so I would really appreciate that. And I don't know what it is, but somehow I think people like Bassem Youssef really show their sort of like truest colors on Piers Morgan show. I don't know why it is. I don't know why this, like, specifically his show seems to be like the where you can sort of like get the best sort of like best view. So maybe just a little defense of Piers Morgan. I say a lot of these people, specifically Bassem Youssef, it was really hard to like find a really good appearance on like a show. And this one, from October 17th seemed like really the best one that really summarized a lot of his beliefs. I want to also just quickly say, yeah, there is something, since, and that has been, talking about Piers Morgan. His policy was always, since October 7, when he had people on, it was always like, do you condemn Hamas? He sort of like stood behind it. He always wanted the people to do it. And I feel like it almost gives these people a free pass. Basically, as long as you say you condemn Hamas, you can say whatever you want. You can say whatever else you want. You can, you can say you condemn Hamas, and then you place Hamas as this sort of like, it's an organization that doesn't even have a power in Gaza. Basically, it somehow committed October 7. We don't know how, but basically nothing else happened. And yeah, the way he talked about the past also, I guess something happened in 2014. I guess something happened in 2018. I don't know if it is actual ignorance, like he doesn't actually know what has happened, or he's sort of like joking, I bet something must have happened. But again, it's this sort of almost like an implication, like October 7 is the only bad thing that has ever come out of Gaza. Like no terrorism before that. October 7 happened. That's really bad. But like almost nothing has happened. And that's also his, view of the West Bank. And as you have said, Hamas still has influence in the West Bank. Palestinian Jihad has a big influence in the West Bank. There's a lot of other groups. There's a lot of different one also, even coming from the Palestinian Liberation Organization. There are terrorist attacks coming out of the Palestinian territories. Again, sort of like an implication that West Bank is this sort of like, secular, modern, like Arabic sort of like a government that like nothing bad happens, and Israel just attacks it for no reason. Again, it's a complete like lie. It's like lying.
Yeah, and on the do you condemn Hamas point, you're absolutely right. Basically, it does give people a pass because, you condemn Hamas and then you condemn any attempt to prevent Hamas from doing what they do, then your condemnation means absolutely nothing. Thank you, Laura Seto, for the super chat. Laura Seto says, non-troll super chat. We love that. We love troll super chats as well. By the way, trolls don't know this, but you can put your trolling comments in a super chat. We're not going to read them, but we will spend that money better than you will. Thank you, Apollo Zeus, for the super chat. Thank you, Jesse, for gifting one Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube membership. Jonathan, anything to add?
Just to quickly jump in, because someone in the past has been saying we are anti-free speech. I'd like to say we are very much pro-free speech. So we like super chats.
People need to see that comment and see the typo in it. By the way, I did want to say there was a comment here. ARC, one day a great panel and great broadcast. Next day, this. Guys, you really need to work on consistency. By the way, Daniel, you're the only person who's been on both shows. So Jonathan, I think they mean you and me. Anything to add before we go to the next clip?
Well, to me, Piers often seems like he wants to find a compromise. He always acknowledges, or seems to always acknowledge something like, yeah, I'm the first one to admit that Israel's done some bad stuff. There's like a lot of that. And, he always seems hesitant, or not always, but often many commentators seem hesitant to say Israel is right and the Palestinians are wrong. Israel's moral, the Palestinians are immoral. They're savages. And it makes me think of Rand's line from Galt's speech, that there's two sides to every issue. One side is right, the other is wrong, but in the middle is always evil. So they always kind of stake this ground in the middle and draw this moral equivalency between modern individualism, i.e. Israel, and backward savagery, which is the Palestinians and Hamas.
Yeah, we've talked about that yesterday. I think Kirk is the one who brought up this point, that people try to they say they are objective, but what they mean actually is they are neutral. That's not the same thing. If you look at Hamas and Israel, and your result is, I'm gonna be neutral, I'm gonna view them in a sense as a moral equals and sort of start from that point, you completely are against objectivity. Objectivity is saying Israel is clearly the moral one. It doesn't, betray you. We criticize Israel probably like, on last episode, we were probably criticizing Israel much more. I'm not sure even if we mention Hamas, only in the fact that Israel has to deal with Hamas. But again, it was a criticism of Israel. Just because you say one side is clearly the more moral one doesn't mean, you just go, you cannot like make a criticism about it. But again, there has to be some standard, and being neutral is not being objective.
There is something else that I was going to say this earlier, but I was enjoying Bassem Youssef too much. And luckily, Jonathan has some haters in the chat who reminded me to say this. So, I first met Jonathan in OCON 2017, a meeting that next year when we met again, I was happy that he forgot because I was a bit starstruck and didn't make a great first impression. But I first...
I say at first my security wouldn't let Razi near me. They said, disturbed individual. I said, I don't know, but they
understandably so, because I first met him in 2017, but I first knew of him I don't know, more than 20 years ago when I used to watch Cashing In on Fox News on Saturdays in my late teens, early 20s, not knowing anything about finance, about investing. But, seeing that show, it was informative, it was entertaining, and it was Jonathan who was informative and entertaining to the point that, I remember looking him up, which I didn't usually do for panelists on shows. And then I saw that on his website there was an Ayn Rand quote, and I thought, oh, this person is an objectivist. I should not at all be surprised. Jonathan has since written a book about investing, and he will do a workshop on investing. Was it titled Investing on One Foot? That's the title, right?
Yeah.
Which is going to happen in 2.5 weeks for Ayn Rand Center UK members at the Midas Mulligan level. That is an expensive membership level, but you see what we give on this channel for free. So if we charge you a lot of money for something, we absolutely do our utmost to give you what you pay for and then some. Jonathan, do you want to say a couple of words on it before we go back to...
Yeah, everyone who contributes. And, Razi, we provide, and you provide 7 days worth of original content inspired by Ayn Rand's objectivism. And that's our goal here, is to help you understand objectivism, learn about it, apply it to your life. So in this special conference, or this special meeting coming up, I'm going to talk about the investment techniques I've learned and what have been inspired to create based on my understanding of Ayn Rand's objectivism, and really how I use objectivism and have used it in my professional career as an investor to beat the market over one 20-year period and have some pretty considerable success. So I hope people will contribute, because we're doing great things here, and join us and learn a little bit about how ideas can move not just the world, but the markets as well.
And that's on the 23rd of September. There's a link to our membership page in the live chat and in the description. This, again, is the most expensive of those levels. If you can't afford that, there are still great perks on every level of membership, and you get to support our work as well. Speaking of our work, let's go back to something a little bit less fun, which is Bassem Youssef, unless Daniel has something to say before
that. I just quickly like to say I really dislike Trump. I think he's a terrible politician and a person, but just as a heads up.
But for people who are not watching the live chat, this is Daniel trolling the trolls, which is another service we provide for free here on the Ayn Rand Center UK. All right, speaking of trolls, let's listen to Bassem Youssef.
Festival, no paragliding, no Hamas. I can go on and on and on and on.
No, but you don't need to, because in a way you're preaching to the choir. I've followed this crisis.
Oh no, you're not preaching. So the thing is, like,
in the sense that I know that what you're saying has validity. Of course.
Piers. By the way, Piers. I am at a disadvantage here. I can hear you. I cannot see you. I am in a claustrophobic room, and so please cut me some slack and don't interrupt me and interrupt my points.
Sure.
So because this has to be fair.
Understand.
Because if you want to only hear your opinion, I can just condemn Hamas and go home. I can do that. So do you want to do that, or do you have a much more nuanced conversation?
No, I absolutely want to have a nuanced conversation. I wasn't aware I was interrupting you. I thought I was letting you speak.
Amazing. So I would say I really applaud Israel for doing one thing that no military force in the world does. Because I heard Ben Shapiro and I heard Ron DeSantis, and they said Israel is the only military force in the world that warns civilians before bombing them. I mean, how fucking cute. That is so nice of them. Because with this logic, if Russian troops started warning Ukrainians before bombing their houses, we're cool with Putin, right? I mean, okay, Habibi, you have warned them, go invade. It's fine. You have done your job. I mean, the thing is, and I understand, and I also heard Ben Shapiro talking about human shield. So you remember my wife's family, they live in Gaza. So I asked them, I told them, when Israel give you the nice warning, the cute warning, does Hamas force you to stay in your home so you can be bombed and use as human shield? You know what? Hassan, here, my wife's cousin, he's a loser. You know, he told me, you know, when I asked him, does that happen? He told me, no. The lying son of a bitch lied to me. I told him, you don't understand. Ben Shapiro and Ron DeSantis keep saying that Israel warned you and Hamas asked you to stay put. So I told you, he's a loser. He never kept a job. He even like failed in all of the interviews to become like a human shield. I would believe Ben Shapiro.
Let me ask you this,
so let's go with that. No. Let me ask you
At some point, I must be able to ask you questions. It's not a monologue for you, Bassem.
If we agree that for the 14,000 casualties, I mean, who's counting, are human shield, does that mean that every single one of those civilians was standing, obscuring a military target behind them? Because that's a lot of weapons. I mean, Hamas is packing.
No, of course it doesn't. And look,
I didn't catch how far into the interview. We're less than halfway, right? Or about halfway.
Less than a third.
But we're off our time though.
Less than a third, so yeah, we're not going to make it through. But we're far enough into the interview that the death toll increased during the interview from 3,500 to 14,000. That is a lot of
But who's counting?
At record speed. But yeah, you know, if Bassem Youssef felt as strongly against the slaughter of Jews as he does about the studio in which he is sitting during this interview, then we might have less of a problem. But no, he is, you know, while spewing this propaganda, he's complaining about what the quality of the warnings. I mean, yes, this is unprecedented for Israel to warn their enemy about before bombing them, and it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not something Israel brags about it, but they shouldn't. They should be ashamed of it and they should stop it. But this guy still has an issue with the fact that Israel does anything, again, because the only type of Israelis that these people like are dead Israelis. And they're really disturbed by the fact that after the killing of Israelis on October 7th was finished, Israelis actually, you know, did something in return to try to prevent it from happening again.
Well, yeah, I'll quickly just say his whole moment there of kind of lashing out about interruptions and he's in a confined space and he can't see him. I mean, you know, that was to me the weirdest part. It's like, bro, this is what you do for a living, you know? Like, I've been on hundreds and hundreds of TV interviews. You know, it's not always set up so convenient, and so they seem almost impossible to be able to roll with it under such circumstances. But you know, my kind of final comment is Rand's, is that, you know, it's the worst evil is laughing at yourself, is spitting in your own face. So I don't look at any of this as, you know, funny at all. I mean, he's you know, laughing at and spitting in Israel's face, whereas they're the victim here, not Bassem's poor family that you know, he suggests are really the ones that are the victims.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to quickly, because there is yeah, if you've seen 12 Angry Men, there is a case when you like try to one of the jurors there, he was like trying to fight every single point, trying to fight every single thing, and sort of you know, make it so he would basically like come up with any sort of evidence just to like support one point. And I think, you know, something that Bassem Youssef did, he was saying like, he was ridiculing the idea that Hamas keeps basically forces civilians to basically stay in the buildings, so Israel inflicts the civilian damage. He was ridiculing the idea. So what does that mean? Do they just stay willingly? Like did they get a warning that Israel is going to strike and they stay willingly? Isn't that even worse? That would basically mean that the Palestinians want to die, so Hamas has this propaganda. Again, sort of like saying Hamas is forcing them to stay. That's sort of relieving, you know, some of the, in a sense, moral blame. You know, if someone forces you to die, you know, it's hard to when someone uses force to basically convince you to do something. It's hard to really take a blame. But if you do it willingly, I mean, that's even worse.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, so people who follow me on X, and if you're not following me at Rosa Ginsburg, may have seen yesterday I tweeted something at Dave Smith. I got a reply saying something like another objectivist, brain dead moron, and then got many, many replies of a similar nature. And that is, I found it interesting that that is how these people argue, but that is how they do argue when it's somebody not like Pierce Morgan, but somebody who understands why they are on the other side. They're not on either side as Pierce Morgan is, but they are clearly on the side of the good and are against the side of the evil. By the way, we might, I think we will talk about that issue with Dave Smith tomorrow on TRS, because I do find it fascinating that so many people think that is how you argue. But yeah, and I encourage people to check out my the response to my tweets at Dave Smith, because it is fascinating. Daniel, where can people find you?
Damn Dan YouTube channel.
And Jonathan, where can people find you?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
They should find my new book, which is called Can You Really Love a Dog? Leonard Peikoff and Ayn Rand on Pets. Dr. Peikoff wrote the essays. It's brand new material from him and photos of Miss Rand that you have never seen before. So if you're a dog lover, can you really love a dog, or a cat lover, this is a great book to pick up right now.
And we'll be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.